There was a time when power had a weight. You could hold it in your hand, measure it, hide it, steal it. For thousands of years, that weight was gold. Empires rose and fell, borders shifted, kings were crowned and executed, but gold remained the final authority. Armies marched for it, wars were fought over it. Entire civilizations organized themselves around its shine. And then, quietly, it stopped ruling the world. Not with a revolution, not with an announcement, but with a decision made behind closed doors, one that severed money from metal and replaced it with something far more dangerous: trust without limits. For most of human history, gold didn't just represent wealth, it enforced discipline. You couldn't print it, you couldn't fake it easily, and you couldn't expand an economy faster than you could mine it. That limitation shaped the behavior of states. If a ruler wanted to fight a war, he needed gold first. If he wanted to build, he needed surplus. Gold forced restraint, and restraint kept systems fragile but honest. Ancient empires understood this instinctively. In Egypt, gold from Nubia financed temples, armies, and monuments. In Lydia, the first true gold coins standardized trade and taxation. In Rome, gold and silver anchored the currency for centuries until the empire began shaving its coins thinner and thinner to fund its ambitions. Even then, the illusion held as long as people believed the metal was still there. Throughout the medieval world, gold moved slowly but decisively. Kings might rule territories, but merchants ruled liquidity. The gold florin, the Venetian ducat, and later the Spanish doubloon became trusted across borders because they contained real metal. Paper promises existed, but they were always redeemable. If trust failed, gold was the final settlement. That balance began to shift in the early modern era. As global trade expanded, moving gold became dangerous and inefficient. Banks emerged as intermediaries, issuing receipts for gold stored in vaults. At first, these notes were honest claims. You could walk in and demand metal. But bankers noticed something crucial. Not everyone did. This realization changed everything. Banks began issuing more claims than they had gold. As long as withdrawals stayed manageable, the system worked. It was the birth of fractional reserve banking, a system built on confidence rather than substance. Gold was still the anchor, but it was no longer fully present. The world was already drifting. Wars accelerated the break. Gold-backed systems couldn't fund industrial-scale conflict. During World War I, countries abandoned gold convertibility to print money for survival. They promised to return later. Some tried, most failed. The interwar years were defined by instability, deflation, and political extremism, symptoms of a system trying to force paper back into metal. Then came 1944. At Bretton Woods, a new order was designed. Gold didn't disappear, it was centralized. The US dollar became the world's reserve currency, and only governments could exchange it for gold. For everyone else, gold was now abstracted. Power had moved from metal to institutions. This worked temporarily. The United States held most of the world's gold and controlled global trade routes. But over time, the same problem returned: wars, deficits, promises larger than reserves. By the late 1960s, foreign governments began demanding gold for their dollars. The vaults started to empty. On August 15, 1971, the world crossed a line. President Nixon closed the gold window. No more convertibility, no metal backing, no restraint. Gold no longer controlled money. Money was now controlled by policy, confidence, and political will. The announcement was framed as temporary. It never was. From that moment on, money became elastic. Governments could spend without immediate consequence. Central banks could stimulate endlessly. Debt could expand faster than real production. Inflation became a feature, not a bug. Asset prices detached from wages, and gold, once the referee, was pushed to the sidelines, recast as a barbarous relic. But gold didn't disappear. It changed roles. Instead of controlling the system, it began signaling its failures. Every time currencies weakened, gold rose. Every time trust declined, demand returned. Central banks quietly continued to stockpile it, even as they told the public it no longer mattered. This is the paradox of modern money. Gold no longer rules, but it still watches. In the decades since 1971, the world has lived through repeated financial shocks: inflation, bubbles, crashes, bailouts. Each crisis was met not with reform, but with more liquidity, more promises, more abstraction. The system grew larger, faster, and more fragile. Gold couldn't stop it anymore. The leash was gone. And yet, in moments of real fear, systemic fear, gold reappears. Not because it yields interest, not because it's efficient, but because it exists outside the system that keeps rewriting its own rules. The day gold stopped controlling the world wasn't the day stability arrived. It was the day discipline left. What replaced it wasn't freedom, it was discretion. And discretion in the hands of power always expands. History doesn't tell us that gold will return to rule again, but it does tell us this: when belief replaces limitation, systems drift toward excess, and excess eventually demands correction. Gold doesn't need to control the world anymore. It only needs to remind us what was lost when it stopped.